need clarity given your important role, and you used a slightly odd form of words in response to William Wragg. You said it's a mistake to conflate the sad and difficult case of a colleague who has fallen foul of the Commissioner on Standards. Could you just clarify, do you believe that Owen Paterson broke the rules? Yes or no?
Yes, and at least that seems to me to... Yes, I do. What we were, as I said at the beginning of the PMQs 2 weeks ago, we did not seek to in any way minimise the importance of that. People who break the rules on paid advocacy must
You are still qualifying it. You're still saying, well, it seems to me. Do you recognise that given your responsibility to uphold the ministerial code, to uphold the rules, to uphold the standards, it's really important that you should not give any impression that when there is an independent report that found on 14 occasions of paid lobbying, that somehow you think that's okay? Can you clarify you don't think it's okay and you don't think that what Owen Paterson did was right?
Of course I don't, and that was the first thing I said when I began on this subject 2 weeks ago. And frankly, I think I think it is extraordinary that colleagues sometimes do behave in this way, and it is quite right that the Commissioner is able to investigate and to hold them to account. I've always sought to do, and I think the committee will agree that I've accepted that it was a mistake and that it was my mistake. All we wanted to do was to see whether, in view of the particular and frankly tragic circumstances of the case, there was any scope for cross-party agreement on an appeals process. That was all we were trying to do.
And given that you have said that you did ask the Business Secretary to apologise, the Cabinet Office Secretary has also apologised, would you express your own regret for not having said 3 weeks ago that Owen Paterson broke the rules, which would have provided clarity about the standards that you expect to be upheld?
Yeah, I began 2 weeks ago, I think it was, by saying that those who broke the rules should pay a price.
No, the issue is whether you should have said 3 weeks ago.
Yes, in retrospect.
Yes,
thank you. Yes, in retrospect, it might have helped a bit if I'd said that I believe that Owen had broken the rules as far as I could see.
You see, as far as I could see, you have an independent process that has looked into this. Every time you say, as far as I could see, well, it seems to me, and you try and qualify it, you are undermining an independent system that we need to work. All of us need this to work. We need you to have some integrity. We need you to be able to uphold the standards.
Yes, then let me repeat. It was clear to me that he'd broken the rules. He'd fallen foul of the rules that we have in Parliament. And I made clear at the outset of my statement, my first answer in PMQs, that for me, that's something that deserves punishment. My question was, in all humility, given the particular circumstances of the case, whether there was any cross-party support for improvement to the system. That was what we were trying to achieve. I can now see that was a mistake. I also think it was a mistake not to go ahead with the 2018 report of the Independent Committee on Standards in Public Life, and I think the House should have implemented those conclusions as well.
And do you also accept that the problem is that with all the prevaricating, with all of the attempting to still be defensive about the things that actually everybody accepts that you got wrong, that whether it is
I'm not remotely prevaricating.
It sounds a lot like prevarication, whether it is, there's a whole series of things that creates an impression that is very unfortunate and is very damaging to public life, whether it is not wearing a mask in a Hexham hospital, whether it is the initially defending colleagues who have broken the rules in a series of different cases. Do you accept that you have a responsibility to go above and beyond,
to
go further than everybody should expect,
I do.
and to actually establish much higher standards?
I do. And look, thank you, Ms. Cooper. And yes, I think it was a total mistake not to see that Owen's breach of the rules, Owen, the former member for North Shropshire's breach of the rules, made any discussion about anything else impossible. And I totally accept that. But as for not wearing a mask in Hexham Hospital, which you wrap up into my general litany of crime, can I just say that actually there was barely 30 seconds when I wasn't wearing a mask. I walked out of a room mistakenly not wearing it. I then put it on as soon as I realized I'd made that mistake. I apologize for it, but most pictures of my visit to the hospital will show that I was duly masked throughout the remainder of the visit, and I was masked on the way in to the visit. But I thank you for giving me the opportunity to clear that up.
Let me briefly and ask you around the... I'm not actually, because it didn't start till 3:20. Let me ask you then briefly just around the violence against women and girls. Less than 1% of actual rapes are prosecuted, less than 2% of reported rapes. You've set a target to get prosecution rates back up to the 2016 levels by the end of the Parliament, but you've said that it's going to be really hard to meet that target, even though it's only 11%. So why is that? When it is such a shocking crime, why are we effectively letting 99% of rapists off and letting so many victims down?
Yvette, Mrs. Cooper, that's an incredibly important question, and it's something that I am campaigning on, working flat out now in government. I lead the Crime and Justice Task Force. This is our #1 priority. You ask why it's so difficult. There are many reasons, but there are, as you will recall, there was a particular case in 2018 in which the evidence from a mobile phone was used by the defence to exonerate an alleged perpetrator of rape, and since then, I'm afraid that there has been a huge reliance on mobile phone data by Defence Counsel. If I can, it's a very important point.
I understand. And I just want
to know what we're doing about it.
This is the top priority. You said that it's your top priority for police forces, but you have refused to put it in the strategic policing requirement, which includes terrorism, child exploitation and organised crime. Will you review this and now put, if it is your top priority, will you put it into the strategic policing requirement and make it a requirement for forces across the country?
So we're making it the top priority for our police. And Maggie Blythe, the Deputy Chief Constable, has taken over the lead for it. We're insisting that mobile phones are handed back to victims within 24 hours. This is one of the reasons we have such victim attrition, which is one of the reasons we have such low prosecution rates, because victims don't feel confident in the system. We're going ahead under Section 28 with allowing victims to pre-record their evidence to give them more confidence. And we're putting a lot of money into ISVAs and IDVAs, Independent Sexual and Domestic Violence Advisors, so that they can help victims through the very difficult period of the trial, again, to stop this attrition by victims, of victims, and the failure to prosecute enough people. We're also investing in many more prosecutors.
Caroline Noakes.
Thank you, Chair. Do you agree that there's a ladder of offending when it comes to violence against women and girls, and that those who might perpetrate crimes like indecent exposure then move on to far more serious crimes like rape, kidnap, murder?
I do believe, thank you, I do believe there is evidence to support that. And if you look in particular at the case of Wayne Couzens, that was something that frankly should have been picked up, and that is unquestionably going to form part of the investigation into what went wrong in that case.
Could there also then be a case to make crimes like public sexual harassment a specific crime, perhaps through the passage of the PCSC bill, which will come back to the Commons soon?
Well, we have Thank you very much. We have quite a lot of statute of one kind or another against serious assault, sexual violence, rape, and as Yvette Cooper has just been saying, the tragedy at the moment is we're not, and harassment, we're not enforcing these enough as it is. And I have to think about how really to tackle the crimes that the public want tackled, rather than widening the range of human conduct that we ask the police to criminalise and enforce against. What I want to see is proper enforcement of the existing law, and as Yvette was saying, prosecution, much more prosecution for those who are accused of rape. And at the moment, that's where the numbers are going wrong.
Having agreed that there's a ladder of offending, should we not have a plan to intervene earlier before those who are harassing women become sex offenders?
I think that what we need to do is, rather than expand the sphere of activity that we criminalise, we need to prosecute people more effectively and more successfully for the things that are already criminal. And there is abundance of statute that is not now being properly enforced, and that's what we're putting our investment into.
Baroness Newlove has an amendment down to the PCSE bill that would make misogyny a hate crime. Do you have any views on the progress that has been made in encouraging women to come forward, and the 75% of them in Nottinghamshire, where the pilot's being carried out, who now feel that they have had a positive outcome? And shouldn't we expand that? Well,
I'll thank you. I'll study what Baroness Newlove has come up with, and I'm glad that women have the confidence to come forward. That's always very, very important. But I think the best way forward, the best way to tackle misogyny and to give women confidence, is to deal with the abundance of courses of conduct that are already illegal and that we are not doing enough to tackle, that we're not prosecuting enough, in particular rape. And that's why we want to double prosecutions for rape, but we are now seeing a small increase.
You're right to focus on the efforts that are going in to increase rape prosecutions, but one of the real challenges is the way women don't feel confident to come forward and report incidents. Isn't it fair to say that if public sexual harassment was a specific crime that they could point at, that the police could point at, and indeed that the Crown Prosecution Service could point out, you actually might see women with more confidence to come forward? I
think that all women should have the confidence to come forward and denounce the harassment or crime against them that they have experienced, and there are proper procedures for those claims and those complaints to be investigated.
One of the cultures underpinning male violence against women is the easy access to extreme, violent, degrading pornography. Can we have any confidence that the online harms legislation that you've said we're going to get to vote on before Christmas will do anything to address that? We know that people like Wayne Couzens access that sort of pornography. Should we be doing something to stop people like him from getting access to it?
I think that's an incredibly important point, because I do think that it is, you look at the evidence of people like Wayne Couzens, not just him, but also, I'm afraid, terrorist offenders, many others. It is clear that people are coarsened and degraded by this stuff, and we will see what we can do. The technological difficulties are quite extreme, but it's up to the online giants to make sure that they don't have this stuff on their systems, and we will take the steps necessary to hold them to account, and that is what the Online Harms Bill is designed to do.
So we can have confidence that there will be legislation that forces the massive online giants to do that?
I think it's time the online giants realised that they cannot simply think of themselves as neutral pieces of infrastructure. They are publishers, and they have responsibility for what appears on their systems. And the Online Harms Bill is designed to give effect to that distinction.
If One final question quickly, Bernard. If there is a challenge around the culture that underpins male violence against women, should we start addressing that in schools, and should we look to be making consent classes compulsory?
I think that kids nowadays are given much better and more balanced instruction about these questions than was the case even 10 years ago. Never mind 20, 30 years ago. But there is a way to go, and it's certainly something that I'm willing to look at.
Thank you.
Julian Knight, Digital, Culture, Media and Sport Committee.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Do you think that acts that are illegal offline should be illegal when committed online?
Give an example.
Cyber flashing. Cyber flashing. I can give you a description if you like, Prime Minister.
Cyber flashing. Yes, sorry. Yes, I think on the whole, cyber. I don't care whether flashing is cyber or not. It should be illegal.
Okay. So if that's the case, will you commit to expand what is at present the definitions of online harms? At the moment we look at terrorism and child exploitation, which places a specific duty of care, following on from your answer to my honourable friend, on the social media giants to include such crimes as flashing and assisting self-harm, pushing people towards suicide, Prime Minister, on the face, crucially, on the face of online harms legislation, on the face of the bill.
I thank you, Mr. Knight, very much for your suggestion. I will make sure that we look at it. And as colleagues know, the online harms bill is due to leave the joint committee.
With respect, though, Prime Minister, the difficulty we have is that there isn't going to be another online safety bill in this Parliament. There may not be one in another Parliament. So are you prepared to shun the opportunity right now to protect women and girls from such vile acts such as we described before, cyber flashing?
Yes, the answer to your question is yes, I certainly, if we can do something in the online harms bill to stop cyber flashing, which is something that is clearly a scourge that is developing, then
well, it's not just about that. It also folds into the whole violence against women and girls and the whole strategy around this. That here's a key piece of legislative intervention that is going to come from the House, and so far the scope is so narrow with all the lobbying that goes on. It's just the idea that maybe perhaps
if you can draft something that will capture it, and let's have a look at it. And it sounds like a useful.
Given that there's a 5-day different time lag between the reporting of the Joint Committee and the promise to present legislation, just to be clear, will we have the second reading, as you promised at the dispatch box, of online harms legislation before Christmas? Yes or no?
I think that depends on the Joint Committee, I'm afraid to say, as far as I...
But Prime Minister, you said at the dispatch box that you would bring the legislation forward before Christmas.
If the Joint Committee can conclude its work
in due time. With respect, Prime Minister, they are charged with the House of doing that 5 days earlier. So you'll have 5 days between the Joint Committee reporting and the legislation, as you promised at the dispatch box, being presented to the House. Will you do that before Christmas, yes or no?
Well, if the Joint Committee reports in time, then yes. Well, then
they will report. So you'll have 5 days, you'll do it if they report 5 days before.
We will report as soon as we can after the Joint Committee has concluded its work. If it can be done before Christmas, I think that would be a great thing. But as far as I understand it, the Joint Committee is due to report before Christmas, and after that, I don't know what the delay might be between bringing it back before the House.
Another thing, Prime Minister, you said at the dispatch box is that you wanted to see the potential criminal sanctions for social media giants if they fail in their duty of care. That leaves a lot of wriggle room with the word potential. I'd like to find out for you what you actually have in mind. Will you incorporate a criminal sanction in the bill, in primary legislation, rather than incorporating the potential at a later date for the Secretary of State to introduce secondary legislation to thereby introduce criminal sanction? Criminal sanctions now, or at the discretion of the Secretary of State?
I share your anxiety, Mr. Knight, about the deferred sanctions that we're currently looking at, and let me take that away.
All right, so is that just a takeaway, or do you
a-
actually think that they should be in place in the bill itself rather than just...
Let me put it this way. I think that we want the
legislation?
strongest possible deterrent and the strongest possible sanctions against people who run online companies who are allowing a torrent of hateful stuff to appear on their networks.
Just final question, Prime Minister. You said on the 24th of March in liaison committee to me that you would ensure that EU visas for creatives and those who are in the touring industry would be, I directly quote here, would be sorted. You'd get it sorted. Since then, the DCMS has had a total of 4 meetings, all with Spain, not with any other of the countries. We have the issue of Lord Frost failing to attend my committee for a long period of time until I had to put a point of order to the House. So, Prime Minister, is 4 meetings in 8 months? How's that getting it sorted?
Well, I'm very grateful to you for the work that you're doing. I know that at least 20 member states, including France and Germany, now offer visa and work permit free routes for touring musicians. And I think I read just yesterday or today that there had been a progress made in Spain. So we are continuing to...
Does that not show, Prime Minister, may I say, that actually meeting them does actually make a difference? That we should actually go and meet our bilateral partners in order to negotiate these deals? Because the issue is that we are losing huge swathes of the touring industry, and we were the centre of touring. It's far bigger than many other industries, and we take a lot more time over. So I just wonder whether or not it would be actually now time to genuinely face up to this and to go and have these bilaterals. But at the same time, the idea of these other countries we have done, that was a press release that was released several months ago, and frankly, take my word for it, nothing's happened. Nothing's happened since March in terms of progressing until very lately as a result of those Spanish negotiations.
Okay, but I fully accept your criticism. But what I would say is that actually the circumstances have also been pretty difficult for touring of any kind for a long time, and what we want to see is markets opening up generally for touring musicians and for tourists of all kinds. We want to see many more people coming to London, whether they're musicians or not, and we should be making an effort to ensure that happens.
Okay, well, we're going to come back to this subject, Prime Minister. It's a subject I feel very, very strongly about, and I think the government could make a more coordinated effort. But can I just go back to the question of violence against women? Since Sarah Everard was murdered, about 80 more women have been murdered, nearly all by men, and at a time when women are feeling so vulnerable. What are you going to do to demonstrate that the government is behind them? And, for example, will you guarantee the safe spaces for women based on their sex, such as changing rooms, hospital wards, prisons and so on, which they feel are under threat?
Yes, so thank you, Sir Bernard. It's appalling to see crimes of violence against women. That's why I said in my answer to Yvette that it was our number one priority. What we're trying to do is all sorts of measures, from the Stalking Protection Order, the Domestic Abuse Act, the steps we're trying to take to increase prosecutions for rape. We're doing all that, and I'm not going to pretend that this is making the progress as that I would like, and it's not going as fast as I would want. But it is an absolute priority for the government, and we're doing things that make a small difference, such as putting a lot more money into street lights and making sure that we have many more female police officers. For instance, we have I think 42% of the Met is now female. 42% of the recruits are now female. So we're changing the culture, but we will not rest until women have confidence in the system, confidence in the streets, and confidence that they will get justice when they're attacked.
And you've been clear in a message to the Joint Committee looking at the online safety bill that you would like them to include extreme violent pornography as a harm, an online harm, and we need to protect our children from that.
I do think that, yes.
Thank you.
I do think I do.
So can we move on to, we're miles behind, of course. Bob Neal.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Prime Minister.
Good afternoon.
Can I go back to conviction levels for rape cases?
Yes.
You're aware of the concern about it. You'd accept, of course, that there should only ever be a conviction if a jury is satisfied, beyond reasonable doubt, on lawfully admissible evidence as to the guilt of the person concerned. Yes? That being so, doesn't the success rate of prosecutions depend upon the quality of the evidence?
Yes.
And therefore the quality of the investigation?
Yes.
What more is being done to invest in investigation of rape and serious sexual offences, both at the police level, training, and at the Crown Prosecution Service level?
Thank you. So what we're doing is we're investing in I think about 85 million more into prosecutors for the CPS, specifically to try to give them more heft and to get cases done faster, to give victims more confidence. But what we're also doing, I chair the Crime and Justice Task Force, and I bring together the ministers responsible for all of this, from Lord Chancellor, Home Secretary, Minister for Policing and Crime, and so on. And what needs to happen is that the CPS, the prosecutors, and the police need to work absolutely hand in glove from the outset, rather than constantly passing the buck between each other about who has failed to assemble the requisite evidence, and that's who's left the file in the wrong condition. That's basically been one of the problems. So we're beefing up the CPS, but also trying to have much greater integration and grip by the police and the CPS together.
That's a fair observation, but also it's going to require resource to do that, isn't it?
It is.
Are you going to make sure that continues to be funded?
We are.
Can I also make the point that you referred to disclosure and the O'Malley case? Would you accept that actually the right to disclosure of unused prosecution material, which may actually assist the defendant or may actually undermine the prosecution's case, is a fundamental safeguard in the system?
Yes, I do of course agree with that principle, but I think what has happened, sadly, is that a great deal of data and information has been mined from mobile phones, and that has produced pain and embarrassment and discomfiture on the part of victims, and has discouraged them from continuing with the case, and perhaps even deterred people from coming forward. And that's why it's vital that we delimit what the police can use in evidence from a mobile phone, restrict it to what is actually germane to the case, and make sure the phone is handed back within 24 hours.
Would you accept that that could be assisted by further investment in technology for the police and the Crown Prosecution Service to search digital material by artificial intelligence in the way that happens in serious fraud cases? Will we put the money in for that?
I do accept that this is an area where technology has moved very fast. Evidential demands, the demands upon the CPS and the police caused by this huge quantity of data have been very severe, and we need technology, artificial intelligence, to winnow it out, to get to what is actually necessary for the prosecution of the case.
The other great cause of victim attrition, of course, are delays in bringing cases to court. That requires courtrooms, lawyers and judges. Will you be reviewing the level of funding made available to the court service and to defence lawyers to ensure that you have good quality lawyers who can handle these cases in a sensitive fashion on both sides of the case?
Yes, well, I have the utmost esteem for the legal profession, and I'm sure that they will do an excellent job. But what we are doing to invest in the in speeding this up is we've got to try to clear backlogs in courts, as you know, and so we're funding 32 more Crown Nightingale courtrooms until the end of March. We've got courtrooms that you talk about technology, and you're quite right. We are equipping courtrooms with cloud video platforms, enabling more than 13,000 cases to be heard virtually every week, and we've removed the limit on the numbers of days the Crown Courts can sit, and so forth. We've got a new super courtroom in Manchester, and we're working flat out to bust the backlog.
Certainly, people are working flat out, and I know the judiciary and lawyers are. But are you also aware, however, that on a number of occasions recently, serious cases have had to be taken out of the list because lawyers were not available, either to prosecute or defend them, or because judges are not available. And that is because experienced lawyers are leaving the profession because of the low levels of pay. You have the chance to put that right with Sir Christopher Bellery's review. Will you commit to funding the results of the Bellery review into criminal legal aid?
I will certainly study the review into legal aid with great care and great interest. And we certainly believe that the criminal justice system needs proper funding. We've provided 150 million this year for victims and witness support services, getting back to the earlier points I was making. And the spending review gives another £500 million to the criminal justice system to help recover from the pandemic.
Thank you. And one final thing, another cause of delay is the length of time under which suspects are released under investigation rather than being bailed. That can last for many months and even years. The policing minister committed in Westminster Hall to reform of that. When are we going to see legislation to reform our RUI and go back to the previous system where you had time limits on bail brought forward?
I'm certainly very attracted to setting benchmarks, scorecards for the whole system, and that should include, in my view, timing, that should include deadlines. I think that justice delayed is justice denied, and it's also justice delayed is wildly more expensive.
It does require private legislation to try.
I'm aware of that.
Are you?
I'm aware of that.
Will that be brought forward?
We're discussing it right now.
Thank you very much, Chairman of the Justice Committee. We're now going to move on to the outcome of COP26 and its implementation. And we start with Business, Energy, Innovation and Skills Committee Chair, Darren Jones.
Thank you, Sir Bernard. Prime Minister, following COP26, will our climate change commitments become firm red lines in all future trade deals?
Forgive me. Sorry, Darren. Our climate change commitments...
Will they become firm red lines
yes.
in future trade deals?
They are commitments that we will certainly be keeping, and we lead the world. One of the reasons we were able to make, I think, a big positive impact at COP26 was because we stick to these commitments, and we've made significant reductions in CO2. So what we say to our friends and partners is that these matter to us. So when it comes to, for instance, Australia.
So on the Australia trade deal, Prime Minister, I asked you on Monday and you didn't answer the question. We dropped our climate change commitments in that trade deal in order to get it across the line. Do you regret that?
As far as I know,
no, we did, Prime Minister.
Our trade deal with Australia actually includes a substantive chapter on climate change, which reaffirms the commitments of both parties to upholding our obligations under the Paris Agreement, including limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees. And Australia, so I must humbly correct you there. No. Australia has
Prime Minister, my
made
question's not on Australia's climate change.
I'm not here as a spokesman for the Australian government.
I understand, which is why I don't want you to answer for them, but answer
there was an agreement in our free trade deal about climate change.
I'm going to move on. Will you give the Department for Levelling Up Housing in Communities the power to block decisions such as new coal mines in the UK?
These are matters that are already for the relevant planning authority.
I'm asking if after COP26 you'll give new powers to the department to block these things.
I think that these are already matters for the relevant planning authority.
So nothing will change?
And I think that what people can see is that this government leads the world in moving away from coal, and actually what you got at COP26 was quite a remarkable and historic event, as Greenpeace themselves.
Thank you, Prime Minister. The reason I asked the question is because
we're moving beyond coal.
We're not blocking a new coal mine in the UK, albeit for the steel industry. But instead of helping the steel industry move away from coal, we're facilitating a new coal mine. And it was cited at COP26 that undermined what we were trying to deliver at COP26, when there was progress, but not sufficient progress on coal. Do you not think our actions undermined our ambitions?
No, I think on the contrary. I think what happened was that our actions convinced the world that it could be done. And what we had in the United Kingdom was an incredible exemplar of a country that used to be 80% dependent on coal for our electricity 50 years ago, is now less than 1% dependent, or 1 or 2% dependent on coal, and will go to zero. And we're going to zero carbon in our whole power generation system. It's a quite astonishing thing.
Thank you, Prime Minister. My next question.
People could see that, and that was the most powerful
Prime Minister,
argument that we had.
We're short on time, so I just need to stick to my questions, if that's okay. The next question is on climate aid. It's been suggested that in order to meet our climate aid commitments at COP26, the Foreign Office will need to spend on average £2.3 billion a year, which is an increase of 140% based on previous figures on climate aid. That was not in the budget from the Chancellor recently. When will the Chancellor update the House on our increased climate aid commitments?
Mr. Jones, I don't recognise your figures. The ones I have in my head are that we've committed to another 11.6 billion pounds of climate aid, or aid to developing countries to go green. We further said that when we go back to 0.7, which the Chancellor's budget predicts we will go back to by 24-25, we'll have a further £1 billion. So that's a £12.6 billion commitment from the UK around the world. That's an astonishing sum of money, and I think most people in this country think that they should. I think are amazed that we're making such a contribution, and we're doing it because we know it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Maybe we can confirm the figures in writing afterwards. It's been reported that you're minded to split up the Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Department to give the COP President Alex Sharma his own Energy and Climate Change Department. When I asked the Business Secretary about this yesterday, he disagreed. What's happening?
We have no such plans, and I think that it's one of the great things about COP26 was that we brought business.
That's fine. If there's no such plans, that answers my question. Thank you. My last question for you, Prime Minister, is about my committee's inquiry into the mine workers' pension scheme. We called for 100% of the profits from that pension scheme to go to the pensioners, instead of the government pocketing 50% of the surplus, as it has done historically. And during the 2019 general election in Mansfield, you said, and I'm quoting here, "I want to tell the Mansfield chap categorically that we will make sure that no Mansfield miner or any other miner signed up to the mine workers' pension scheme is out of pocket. We will make sure that all their cash is fully protected and returned. I've looked into it, and we will ensure that's done." But Prime Minister, you rejected my committee's proposals to return those profits to the pensioners. I'm not sure why you said to those voters why you had looked into it and why you would return all their cash when, since, your government has clearly not done either. Did you mislead those voters in 2019?
Well, I can tell you, Mr. Jones, that I certainly didn't wish to give those voters any false impression.
But you said specifically that you had looked into it and you would ensure that it would be done, and you said it was categorical that was the case. It suggests that there was some thought behind it. You hadn't just mistakenly misled voters. No?
Well, I will have to get back to you on my quotation in the Mansfield chap, and I will write to you as soon as I can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for that. We will expect that. So moving on to Philip Dunn, Chairman of the Environment Audit Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Berman. Prime Minister, in your opening remarks to the COP26 conference in Glasgow, you made clear your own personal commitment to, I think you said, irrefutably turning the tide and beginning the fight back against climate change. What changes do you think you need to make to the structure of government to be able to deliver net zero Britain?
I think that government is well structured to deliver net zero in the UK, and what we have is a COP president in Alex Sharma who will help to continue to make sure that our climate change objectives, the world's climate change objectives are delivered. And ALOC is going to work with the incoming Egyptian presidency of COP, the Emiratis, who will be running the next COP28, and there's the real job of work now is global. We have to make sure that everybody, all the 190 plus countries, stick to the commitments that they made and make COP26 real.
So his focus will be on delivering the global commitments. At the moment, he chairs the Climate Action Implementation Committee, which relates entirely to the UK delivery. Will he continue to chair that committee?
Yes.
And when did you last chair the Climate Action Strategic Committee, which sits above it?
I can't give you the date, but it was not very long ago.
Would you mind letting us know? And
Certainly.
when will you be chairing the next one?
Well, we are driving the whole green industrial revolution throughout government, and it's something that I set out in the 10-point plan almost exactly a year ago. We've been leading it from the centre, but also relying on departments of state to get on and do it. And I pay tribute to ALOC, but I also pay tribute to Bayes, to Kwasi Kwarteng and many other ministers who are running with this agenda. And since we produced the 10-point plan, we've actually seen investment in green technology in this country of the order of £15 billion and the creation of many thousands of jobs.
I think that is the point, Prime Minister. You've set a plan, you've set a strategy, and I think there was good coordination in developing the net zero strategy across departments at civil service level. But the challenge is that the base department, only a sixth of its activities relate to this agenda, and other departments at the moment are being left more or less to their own devices to deliver, and there isn't the kind of oversight which would allow you to ensure they are delivering.
Well, that's not true, because...
Well, we're behind on the fourth, the fifth and the sixth carbon budget projections for the coming...
Yes, but the oversight is being given by me, because we are driving the green industrial revolution, the 10-point plan. So on CP6, for instance, the only way to do that is to put in the cleaner, greener forms of heating, and that is something that we're continuing to push on very hard. It will be tough, but it can be done. And I think the lesson of clean technology over the last 20 years or so is that provided government gets behind it and shows that it's committed to it, the price will come down. The price of EVs is now falling. The price of wind and solar have fallen very sharply.
If the COP president is going to continue to chair the implementation committee, which I think sounds like a good idea, although it's UK focused, it will be diverting him from his global role, which seems challenging for him. Will you discuss with him the remit, the composition and the reach of the committee to make sure that they have the necessary powers to deliver across government? Because all the evidence that we've had for our committee is that there is considerable lack of joined up activity across government to deliver this agenda. We have multiple ministers appearing before us, and they regularly say they don't have responsibility for the subject that we're talking about.
Well, the whole of government is working to deliver this agenda, and you can see the efforts in the results that they're producing, because we are securing record sums of investment in green technology, we're reducing our carbon output, and we're creating many tens of thousands of jobs.
My final question, Prime Minister, is the UN Secretary General said in his opening remarks that his intent for the next year is to establish metrics to measure performance by countries in meeting their NDC commitments at COP. Are you intending to introduce new metrics and measurements to be able to measure your own performance, your government's performance against its commitments?
The measurements are clear for everybody to see, and they're there in the reductions of CO2 that we achieve, and one of the things that was achieved at COP26 was agreement on the Paris rule book, so that everybody has common metrics and common dates by which they judge progress.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Just to follow up his machinery of government point, I'm quite surprised you're so happy with the machinery of government, which you, under COVID, I seem to remember you were very frustrated with it, and you didn't feel it worked. So what has changed, or are there lessons we've learned from COVID that we can implement that will accelerate and give the public confidence that we're going to implement
I didn't say I was happy, Sir Bernard. I don't think I said I was happy. I said that so far, as far as I can see, right, departments are working. They're pretty. The beauty of the 10-point plan was it set out pretty clearly where we need to get to, and how to get there. And what we're also now producing is 10 specific roadmaps for each of the areas. So for EVs or carbon capture and storage or whatever, we are producing. We're producing for business the things that government is doing to make each of the 10 great projects investable, and I think that will help things greatly.
But COVID demonstrated if you produce real data, engage the public, and set up the machinery to drive the process, you can achieve miracles. Isn't that what we need to do with this post-COP agenda?
Yes, and that's what we're doing. And so we have a delivery unit, as you all know, Sir Bernard, under Emily Lawson, but with many others working to her, that is chivying everybody, that is studying the data in real time and seeing where we're going.
Thank you. Now moving to Neil Parish, Chairman of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. I want to talk about the practicalities, really. We've signed up as one of the countries to reduce methane by 30%. So, I mean, we've got much of our red meat industry, beef and sheep, is produced on permanent pasture, and that permanent pasture holds a lot of carbon in the soil. So that's a good thing. So how do we balance reducing our methane? Is it take all the sheep and cattle off the hill, off of Exmoor? I don't think you want that. So how do we help farmers to get to this 30%, not just by reducing numbers? Can we bring in new technologies? What can we do to help the farming sector?
Well, Neil, Ms. Parish, I'm told that there very substantial progress is being made with new technology to reduce the methane emissions from livestock, and I think we should encourage those, and I think you can do it without any way